welcome to The Creatives, everybody, where we explore creativity through conversation. And as you know, every great thing began with a conversation. I'm your host, Ramsey, and today I'm joined by the vibrant and energizing Nickie Shobeiry, who is a media content creator in journalism, film and TV, radio, and copywriting. And we're going to dive all into that today and learn about Nickie and her perspectives and insights. Nickie and I connected through Dina El-Sawir, who was a past guest on the show. So Dina and I actually went on to shoot a short film after that, like not directly after that episode, but we met doing the podcast. And then we did a short film through the summer. So that's pretty crazy how, like I said, one started with a conversation and it led to a film that could be award-winning one day. We'll see. So in this episode, we're going to continue our exploration of creativity through learning about Nickie and her origins, her perspectives, and her insights. And we hope that by the end of this episode, you will just have one more piece to your puzzle that is creativity, because creativity is this kind of abstract thing that you can't really touch. So the more we talk to people, the more clear of a picture I have, at least, and I hope our listeners do too. Before we begin, I'd like to say a big thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to Pano Media for sponsoring the show and powering the production with all of the tools that we use here. Pano Media is your trusted source for video production in Ottawa and surrounding areas. So if you have a story to tell, a brand to promote, or a creative idea, make sure to reach out to Pano Media via the link in the description below. And also shout out to Midnight Hour Studios, which is where we are today. Midnight Hour Studios is giving you, the listeners and viewers, 25% off your first booking using code TheCreatives. All of that will be down in the description below. And one more thing I just wanted to mention, you may be listening, but you might not be subscribed. So make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to it, whether that's on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, or YouTube. Hit the subscribe button so that you can stay up to date on when new stuff comes out. So without further adu, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Ramsey. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks for being here, Nickie. So we spoke briefly, and I remember we had a little chat beforehand, and I was like holding back, trying to ask you so many questions before, because I want the conversation to kind of be the first time. So today we have some cool topics that I'd like to cover, because I want to learn about you and what you've kind of been through and done, and you know all the hats that you wear and what that's like. So typically with the Creatives Podcast, like it starts with creativity. The conversations kind of just go wherever. We are, this is the 24th episode technically. So welcome to the 20, even though I've abolished episode numbers just because it's just episodes. Like it's just, here's another one, have a listen. But basically the podcast was created, like I said, as an exploration of creativity. And I'm excited to kind of, dive into your mind and see how you view the world and kind of what you've been through. So
yeah, Ramsey, no, I'm looking forward to it. Lucky number 24. There we go.
Is that a lucky number?
No, I'm just saying that.
Just saying that.
It is mine now. Yes.
It is yours now. So Nickie, I just want to know, can you tell us about your origins, like your origin story? Like what are your main chapters of your life that kind of led you here? One thought that I like is how every decision, every action you've ever made in your life has led you to like right here and right now. And it's a thought that I like to remind myself of, because it reminds me to be present and think like, okay, I'm here today, right now in this moment because of everything that's happened, like that's led up to it. It's not just random. So can you tell us a little bit about your origin story and how you ended up on the Creatives Podcast in a way? It doesn't have to be that detailed, but yeah.
No, absolutely. You know what? You mentioned that Dina connected us, and I loved when you asked Dina this question in one of your episodes, and she went into this like Marvel universe. So parents are from Iran. Yeah. They left Iran during the revolution, so in 1979. Okay. They ended up in Denmark, met there. That's where I was born. And we were in Denmark until I was 7. Mm-hmm. So I have very, very, very minimal Danish left. And then we went to England in the southwest, very rural. And then, we were there until in 2017. And that is when I ended up moving to Canada. And that was a very sudden decision to stay. Mm-hmm. I have family here in Canada. We were here for the Persian New Year. seeing my grandma, seeing my cousins, and I met my partner, and we decided that I would cancel the return ticket and stay in Canada, and it all has miraculously worked out. 6 years later, I am here on this couch on the Creatives Podcast.
I love that. So you stayed because of your partner? Like you didn't want to do long distance, or you were just like, across the ocean's not going to work for me, I got to stay?
Screw it. You know what, Ramsey, what is so funny is that at the beginning I used to be sort of embarrassed. I'd be like, oh, I don't want to like tell the world I did this for a boy, but yeah. No, I just embrace it. Yes. Yeah. Also, frankly, yes. First and foremost, that I think it definitely made the decision a lot easier to just uproot everything. He was also my cousin's housemate, so all sort of, it was a happy little cocoon for sure. Also just being in Ottawa and seeing the network that exists here, and the way that my partner Alex is in the community. My cousin Mariam, honestly, my uncle, who was the family member who decided to come to Canada as well, when everybody was still in Denmark. Growing up, I'd always been told Canada is this wonderful place, and don't stay where you are, as wonderful as England has been to me, and as much as I love it, and it's also home. So I think all of that really lined up for me to be like, well, here we go. I will stay. There's opportunity here. There is friendship. There's family. So that's how that ended up. I like that. That's interesting. And I like what you said, how embracing your story kind of thing. When before you said maybe you didn't want to say it to the world, shout it from the rooftops, like your reasons why. But I find it's much more fun to just embrace your story, because I have that same thing where I feel kind of like embarrassed about certain parts of my life for no reason at all. Yes. Simply just because it's unconventional, I guess. And I also find it interesting because I was born in the UK. I was born in London. So it's cool because I feel like you can reflect back to me maybe what my world would have been had I stayed there. Oh. And, I came here when I was 7 years old to Ottawa. So I don't exactly have much significant memories, or I guess significant to my career at least, in London. So I'm curious what it was that drew you here, or like that when you came to Ottawa, what did you see and feel that was different than the UK? Yeah. Ramsey, that's a very good question. And actually, it's so interesting, the parallels, because I was 7 when I left Denmark. You're 7 when you leave England. And I know, as you say, right, there isn't, how many memories really do you hold on to so many years later? But I'm really curious to hear from your end as well, what the sort of things are about England that you still carry with you. Because I know for myself, there are little cozy memories from Denmark, or the sweets from Denmark that I end up really missing. But Ramsey, I think to answer your question about Ottawa, again, I know the city gets this bad rap for being boring, or being really hard if you're creative to kind of grow your career to where you want it to be. But I think I had the privilege of coming to the city and immediately, through my cousin, partner, family, getting a amazing network of friends, of a community who were all interested in the same things I was. It was through coming to Canada that I was actually able to get into film, which seemed incredibly far away to me when I was still living, again, in essentially the countryside in England. And, I'd moved to London back in the UK, did it for about 5 months. I think I was way too early in my career to make that city work for me. And it can kind of swallow you up when you're a lot younger. And so Ottawa just seemed to provide that sort of the size of the city made sense. Growing up, I'd always wanted a home base, a place I could call home while still being able to travel around for work. And Ottawa has quickly become that.
That's interesting. Yeah. I don't hold too much, to be honest. It's kind of unfortunate. I hold blurry memories. I'd love to go back to kind of fill those memories in. But I guess maybe what I do hold is a little bit of the culture in a way. And I went to a school that was ran by nuns. We had uniforms.
Excellent.
So that kind of discipline, I feel maybe was instilled at a young age, even though we were still kids just doing stupid things at times. But it's funny because I feel like I had less opportunity to do stupid things when I lived in UK, because my mom was always scared to let us roam free. Whereas here we were able to roam free, and as a result we did stupid things because we could go out and do stuff on our own, because it was much less dangerous, I guess, living in the suburbs of Ottawa than it was living in London, England.
Makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. But so when you moved to London for 5 months, were you trying to make a career in media and like content creating?
You know what, Ramsey, I never thought that I would be reflecting on that time on a podcast one day. This is excellent. But you know what, at the same time, the way that I get through things too, of all these different failures, is always thinking this is going to make a hilarious story, which has served me very well. Yeah. What was I trying to do in London? Yeah, I guess so. I guess the dream in the end would have been being able to do something or other in media. But no, it was very much sort of anything. I mean, I have a copywriting business as well, communications. So really just trying to find any way to grow my career in either creative spaces or in more of the kind of copywriting side. And it was not going my way. And again, that city, if you aren't prepared for it, if you've grown up in Devon and you don't know what to expect, it will kind of swallow you up a little bit. And I'm grateful for my time there. I feel like I learned a lot about myself from it. And I'm also grateful that I got to say, I'm all right, I'm going to move back. And then honestly, it was just a few weeks after that I ended up in Ottawa anyway. And I remember there was a job that I'd wanted in London and I didn't get it. And being on the phone to my dad, saying, oh, nothing's working. And, he'd shared, that even if this thing didn't work out, it's for a reason. Everything's for a reason. It's going to lead you somewhere else. And it is very interesting reflecting back on that time and saying, yeah, it did. It led me to this couch.
Right here, yeah.
To this exact podcast.
Every decision.
Exactly.
Yeah. You were at a crossroads many times in your life. And if had you went the other way, we might not be sitting here.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool, actually. Like to think that, I don't know, maybe it did happen. Maybe it did work in your favor. And I've had times where I look back and I'm like, that actually was for the better. And I had finished university and I was like loosely applying for jobs. And I think I had like one interview while still working in a kitchen, and it didn't work out. I didn't get the job. Maybe I applied for two. And then, the opportunity presented itself to start doing video production full time. And, maybe had I gotten that job, I wouldn't be sitting here right now doing this. I might be working for another company, working my way up those ranks. So it's pretty cool. I wish I held more. Maybe it's hard to say I wish, but it'd be interesting to see what my life would be like in UK still. But I'm not upset at the fact that my parents brought us here, because I love outdoor anything, cars, for ATVs, just so it's nice to have space. Over here you have space to do that stuff. And Ottawa is actually positioned close to like the 5 major Canadian racetracks. The furthest one's only 3.5 hours away. So it's funny because my dad, he's worked on cars his whole life, and he doesn't particularly love racing and the fact that I race cars. He thinks I'm just pouring money into something that's like just a waste of money, because he had a friend who went into racing, and some say it's the easiest way to go from a billionaire to a millionaire is to start racing cars. Oh,
interesting.
Spending all your money. So
all your billions.
Yeah. And I'm like, Dad, you literally moved us. I didn't know at the time. As I grew older, through getting into the cars, I learned that Ottawa's positioned in one of the best places in the world for racetrack access. Although it's only 6 months a year, sure, but it's still like we have legendary racetracks where world-renowned drivers have competed there.
Oh my God.
So, I know British motorsports is also huge, but I don't think I would have had that part of my life, because it wouldn't have been as easy to access living in a city,
right,
and racing cars. So, thank you for sharing that little, insight background. I like asking that question because it does uncover things, because people start reflecting back on their own life and then thinking about stuff they maybe haven't thought of in a while.
Yes, absolutely. And Ramsey, that's so funny what you're saying about, so your dad, I mean, I'd kind of seen from online and in previous episodes, your passion for cars as well. I didn't realize that extended to racetracks, and I didn't know this about Ottawa. So that's a very interesting fun fact there, definitely. Again, Ottawa is not boring. It's got things going on. Yeah.
The one thing it lacks, having been to like Montreal, New York City, other big cities, it lacks that like rich nightlife.
Oh, yeah.
Where you can just have a incredible dining experience, and you can, you have all these options of what to do in an evening. I find Ottawa kind of, it's limiting, or it's limited by a few areas that are alive at night, but they're also not alive every night. Yeah. Whereas like in Montreal, you can, Tuesday night, you go out, it's alive. People are, you know, it's definitely a more expensive lifestyle in those bigger cities, but Ottawa's cool because we have access to so much. Like we have access to ski hills, to racetracks, to lakes, to everything. Even the US is like down the road. So it's cool. Yeah. One question I like to ask, because I'm just trying to gather maybe a generalized definition of this, is you actually brought this up about collecting a database of the information that we get on the podcast.
Oh, right, yes.
So now this is time for you to contribute to that database that doesn't exist yet. Nickie, what does creativity mean to you?
Ramsey, you would have thought I would have reflected on this a bit before just rocking up here. I think it's just the ability to allow yourself to reflect and be playful with ideas. I think it's just anything, and it doesn't matter what situation you're in, if you're able to kind of lift guardrails off how you think to allow new ideas to come in and to reflect perhaps in a different way than you have before, I would call that creativity. And it, you know, I feel it in my heart. It makes me sad when people say they're not creative. I'm like, of course you are. You're a human being. It takes creativity to kind of go through every single day of our lives in some capacity or another if we're open to it.
I love that. I also love that it wasn't a prepared answer either, because it's more authentic. Because I'm starting to realize creativity is a feeling, and the fact that no one can actually have a concrete definition of it is why it exists, I guess, if that makes sense. And I like how you said you allow yourself to be playful, because that's a big one. Because a lot of the time there's that voice in your head that's like, you know, don't do this because it's silly, or you'll look silly or whatever, but that thing is actually really fun and exciting. And maybe it is silly, but you know, you gotta, like you said, drop those guardrails and see where it goes.
That's it. Is there anything that brings silliness into your everyday life?
My excitement towards like things like things that are like actually really cool. I find the world we live in, there's an abundance of really cool tech and just things that happen that we're kind of numb to it, but I still find myself looking at certain things and being like, whoa, like that's crazy. Even I was telling Ryan, our last guest on the last episode, how I get excited because my route home passes the airport. It goes behind the airport. So oftentimes I drive under airplanes, and I just get so excited when I see a plane flying, because when you think about what it actually means for a giant piece of metal to fly at 400 or 500 kilometers an hour, it's incredible. Yeah. Same thing with drones. I'm a licensed drone operator. I operate for the film industry and for commercial purposes, and I still get excited using these tools because I'm like, this is crazy. Like I'm flying a camera using a remote and I powered it with batteries and it fit in my backpack, or maybe if it was a bigger one, I brought it in a case. And those little things that excite me, you know, like keep me, I guess, playful in a way. And also just trying to appreciate and acknowledge the beauty around me. That's like just things I like to remind myself. I'm not perfect. I'm still working on all that stuff, but yeah, those are a couple things.
That's wonderfully said. And you know what? A wonderful philosophy as well. I mean, it is kind of incredible the amount of technology that we have, and to be able to remain grateful for that, and to be able to remain in a state of wonder about it. I think that's great. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There is a lot. Even the tools we're using to record this, and if you think about, like, I don't know necessarily the back end of how things work, but using the tools, and then now we're good at, like, our voices and our image will be distributed through the internet, whatever the hell the internet actually is. I don't know, but I know how it works. And then people can hear this conversation at multiple different locations at different times. Yeah. And you can also be having a conversation with someone, and then 10 people are listening to your podcast. And now we're more multidimensional than ever, because now you're existing in people's minds all at once. And that was a big motivation of this podcast, and why I love podcasting, because it allows you to kind of spread your thoughts and your feelings to a lot of people that want to listen, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I mentioned to you I was flying back from Boston when I was listening to one of your episodes. I'm up there in the air, and for you as well. Of course, the more you do this database of yours will also be built.
Yeah, which I'm gonna need help with. Actually, turning what is it? Just like data like this, and I did some of that in university with statistics and like my 4th year grad project involving research, but like I guess qualitative data. That's the word I was looking for. I'm not sure how to turn this into any sort of data set and what value that may have. What do you think? Like, what was your reasoning behind mentioning that?
I think, so I'm a journalist, and I honestly, Ramsey, so much effort goes into creating something, whatever that is, podcast,
right,
documentary. And so I think always just trying to reflect on what are other ways, what are other formats that this could live in. And, you know, for you to be connecting with creatives in this way. And it's just like you're doing a lot of data collection. So if you do gather that up, would you be able to go and do a talk about it somewhere? Would you be able to go and, you know, and you're essentially doing very interesting research here. So I'm just curious, what are other ways that could live on in the world? And then of course also promote the podcast so that this keeps growing.
Yeah. I like that. I never saw it as research, you know, in a way it is research, like, cause it's true. Like I'm learning about you and your mind and your experience. So it's a cool way of looking at it. Yeah. So good to know. We'll work on something, collecting that data set. We'll circle back in like 2024 when we have all this data, nothing to do with it. And
we're going to be very smart.
It's going to be cool.
Yeah.
It would be interesting though to talk about it on like public speaking is one thing. I was always drawn to it when I was younger. I would watch the show Top Gear. I'm sure you know what Top Gear is.
Yes. So good.
Love cars. And those are automotive journalists. You know, I would look up to them and see them speaking on stage. And I'm like, that's cool. Like, I actually only reflected on this recently that I enjoy that aspect of like Top Gear was the presenting part of it and the speaking. And that made me realize why I'm drawn to this form of content creating and generating. But it is challenging, I find, and I want to learn more about your work, but you mentioned you are a journalist. What goes into that? I know you've done some on-screen, like TV shows and journalism, so how about we start with let's talk about your work, and then I want to ask you questions about what goes into that, actually.
Sure, okay. So in terms of what I have done, I started out in newspapers in England. I was very lucky. I was, I was a sort of 18 years old around then when I was able to go and kind of write for a local newspaper. Again, tiny little paper in Devon, which has since very sadly, of course, like many local media outlets, it has shut down. But it was a great experience in getting to really cut my teeth in, you know, knowing how to not be precious about my writing, to just be able to sit in a busy newsroom and create a story, write something. How do you fact check a thing? And then they also, again, it was a wonderful opportunity. I got to have a little TV column where I could let a bit of the creativity out. And it was covering the Great British Bake Off, and it had my face on it.
The Great British what? Sorry?
Bake Off.
Really?
Yes. I would do little recaps. And
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and it would run in print as well. So we have all the clippings back in England. And so, kind of taking that experience, come to Ottawa, started out freelance journalism. So I have written for the Ottawa Business Journal, CBC Arts, there's Shondaland. So kind of two prongs there. A lot of my coverage is around social impact and business. But then of course, what really excites me as well is being able to cover arts and culture. And again, my heritage is from Iran. So any stories that get to cover that, I think the Shondaland article I wrote was really diving into underground music in Iran and some of those artists. So it's been a really interesting journey, and that writing background, also allowed me to get into film, which I have always loved as well. So doing documentaries with CBC and Bell, very much, again, focused on arts and social impact. And then also getting into radio, which was great too, over at CKCU FM. I was over there for about a year, producing and writing radio programs. And then most recently, also working on a little 5-minute CBC Creator Network short, to really diving into, again, the Iranian heritage piece, and especially Iran is like a global center of nose surgery, and so getting to connect with lots of interesting, Iranian folks, and also people I've admired like Maz Jobrani, all these comedians, to get to share their stories about their noses. So that's the kind of creative side. Then business side, for the past sort of several years, I've also been running my own communications and copywriting business too. So keeps the writing skills sharp for sure.
That's really cool. I like how you've used writing to kind of take you through these industries. I've never met someone who has used writing to get through the film industry, documentary, radio, TV. Is writing the core of everything that you do, like in film and documentary?
That's also very good question. I would say it's my strongest, the thing that I have been naturally drawn to.
Okay.
And everything else kind of grew from there. So I produce as well, all of that stuff.
Okay,
I enjoy it. And I'm grateful that I do, because I find, it's good to have a kind of a foot in both worlds, to be able to the strategy and the and the planning, whilst also letting loose of the creativity as well. And then hosting as well. So whether public speaking and kind of in front of cameras too, which the first time I was going to do that, I genuinely wanted to throw up on a stage. I've never felt that nauseous in my life, but my cousin was in the audience.
Was it live? Like you were in front of an audience?
It was 250, 300 people.
Wow.
I mean, I'd done a little bit of public.
Debut.
Yeah, but it was really like, my God.
Yeah.
But my cousin, she was in the audience. She quickly wrote me a note that said something like, everyone feels like this. You're doing great. And I was like, it's going to be fine. We had so many technical difficulties, which was great too, because it really forces you to be on stage and in front of all these people to just make something up on the spot and realize that you don't die when you do that. And so that's made all of this a lot more comfortable, I would say.
That's really cool. Yeah. Public speaking is scary.
Yeah.
There's something about it. Like I can speak on camera very comfortably and have a camera pointed at me. And a big reason why I endeavored into initially like getting on camera was because I'm like, if I'm going to film people, I need to know what it feels like to have a lens pointed and understand the challenges there. So, but then it turned into actually wanting to create valuable videos for people to watch. But it's interesting. So what I was asking about the writing is, in all the industries and the part of your story there, was writing part of it, or did you do other sorts of aspects of the filmmaking and the documentary producing? You said you were a producer, right?
Yeah, no. So I have run away from the technical side for a very long time.
Okay.
Which I realized, I'm quickly hitting the limit. I should learn a few things.
Yeah.
It was always script writing. So I did a little course on it in university as well. And then most recently I was, the Banff World Media Festival partners with Netflix for a Diversity of Voices program that I got to go to, being a fellow of that, which was very helpful. The script writing has always been my most comfortable space, but production too, I find I've really enjoyed as well. Kind of just, again, strategically, how do we create this thing? What are the funding sources? Who are the people that we need to involve? How do you network with people to get to that? Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I would say that's harder than the technical in some ways. Like that's like the real human interaction stuff. The technical is kind of, in most ways, it's black and white. It's either right, like you're either doing it the right way, or actually, no, I take that back. It's not necessarily black and white, but up to a certain level, it is black and white. But that's cool. I want to ask you, Nickie, and maybe this is part of why you do this, but what is your biggest dream in this life? What is your kind of why? Like, why do you do this?
It's a good question. Also, Ramsey, thank you so much for telling me that it is black and white up to a certain point, because this is encouraging me. I just want to get to that point where I'm like, okay, I get the basics. We can move on.
Yeah.
My why. Yeah. So I want to be able to, first of all, just to be able to be sustainable from my creative work.
Right.
To be able to live a happy life, calm life, rooted, grounded, able to take care of family, myself, everyone's good.
Nice.
So that's probably the biggest one. And then, perhaps sort of more from the soul side. Just being able to tell the kinds of stories that would have really meant something to me growing up. So being able to, again, celebrate Middle Eastern stories on the screen, and just creating a little bit of space for those kind of underrepresented stories, but being able to do it in a way where it is reflecting joy and comedy and lightheartedness. So I would say that's kind of the biggest piece there. And I think coming to that has also, how can I put this? We all have our own personal experiences. So I think realizing, these are the kinds of stories that I love telling. There's a reason for it. Each time I get to connect with people, I'm learning something about myself and about them and about our place in the world. And so I would say it's those two things.
So storytelling is a big one, right?
Absolutely.
That's one thing. So in video production, filmmaking, story is, because of the fact that there are so many good tools and you can no longer hide, let's say a bad story with a beautiful image. So now it's kind of coming back to story. And it's an ever evolving process where I'm trying to weave story into like everything that we do. So when it comes to storytelling, what is your approach to telling a story and like finding a story to tell? Like what makes something stand out enough for you to want to tell that story?
Oh, that is a very good question again, Ramsey. Can see why you're, again, the host.
Just curious.
But it's important.
Genuinely wondering, yeah.
No, it's a very good trait, and this is why you have to make that database. As a journalist, I mean, you do kind of have on the journalistic side, the benefit of that it's always accompany a person. There is no shortage of folks who want to pitch themselves.
Right.
So you don't have to try very hard, which is excellent. You just get to open your inbox or, and then kind of strike a balance between what is it that your editor wants, what kinds of stories have you covered to be able to create the space for them. But that's more, I'm thinking more of kind of business reporting and those kinds of things. But in terms of for myself or for the kinds of scripts that I work on, it's a very interesting and difficult thing to answer. Radiolab, so one of the journalists, one of the co-hosts of Radiolab had released a sort of beautiful, I think it was 30-minute episode quite some years ago now, kind of diving into how he would find stories online. So I think, there's obviously incredible tools out there. But for myself, I've been lucky enough that I'm in places where I get to connect with people all the time. And I'm lucky enough to have had the space to be able to deeply reflect on my own life too. And so when I meet folks, I can say, okay, I can see how this is something that's capturing me. I can see how there's important impact in what they're doing. And also I can see how audiences will be interested in what they're saying so that we can get funding behind this idea. So I think it's kind of a three-pronged approach each time.
Yeah. But then when it comes to actually, let's say it's a compelling story and you can get funding and everything secured, then now you actually have to tell the story, right? So how do you actually tell this? Where do you start when you tell the story? I'm asking because it is something that I struggle with when it comes to filmmaking. It's like, okay, narrative filmmaking is I'm new to it. Dina opened me up to it when we shot that short film. And it intrigues me and it's cool to kind of create this world, but it's something I struggle with myself, like coming up with a story to tell, because there's always like, is it good enough? Should I tell the story? So yeah, when it comes to actually telling the story, how do you go about doing that?
Yeah. Just going to take a moment to reflect. So I think, on Issa Rae, I'm pretty sure it was Issa Rae who said this in a masterclass, specifically for script writing, whatever moment you decide to open up, whether it's your narrative feature, whether it's your pilot TV series, you have to have a very strong reason for why you're choosing that day. Why are you introducing your character to us right now. And I think the example she uses is it their birthday, or did they just get fired from a job, or things like that. So I think, first of all, just ensuring that there is nothing on the page that is wasting your audience's time, or just always ensuring every single moment is as engaging as it can be. On the sort of TV side, journalistically, I found it very interesting. No matter what the topic is, whether it's anything from investment portfolios to protecting your IP, asking people about their personal journeys into why are you doing the work that you're doing now. Often they'll give you some sort of story that can be used as some kind of analogy or metaphor, or just an interesting insert into an article. So I always like to, as much as possible, start a story from that viewpoint as well, so people get like a tiny, like just a few lines of a bit of story time, grounding something in a more human story, and then going into whatever topic it is that you're looking for.
I like it. It seems like a more intentional approach to storytelling, rather than just like, let's just throw a dart at a map or equivalent in storytelling. And you have a quote on your website that says you're using storytelling excellence for good. How can you use story to do good in this world, or how do you?
You do your research, my friend.
Nice.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I was never going to be a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Did
your parents want you to be a doctor?
You know what? All the trauma just goes out right now.
Engineer, doctor, lawyer.
But I was very lucky that they, my dad was a dentist, and I think he had a very hard time with it. I loved helping people, but I think just he worked for the NHS in England out of principle, which is amazing, but it's very difficult.
What is NHS?
So the National Health Service.
Okay.
So we've gone in
the public health
going
sector.
in a completely different direction.
It's okay.
But
It's
I
fine.
swear it connects. I'm going to forget what you asked me.
I'll re-ask the question. Yeah.
But he, so it's sort of, you're seeing like up to 30 patients a day, and like you don't really have the time with them that you want, and everything is very, very quick. And, I know if he had a bit more time, a bit more space, but he didn't want to go into the kind of private healthcare. And so all to say, I think he was very aware of just do what you love and go after that thing. So I was very lucky that my Iranian parents were like, just as long as you're okay, we're okay. Your question was? My question was, how do you use, you mentioned that you use storytelling excellence for good in this world, and how can you do that? Because it's maybe not seen as a mechanism for doing good. Maybe it's seen as entertainment by some, or maybe necessity by others. But how do you do good in this world? By telling stories. Yes. So again, never going to be a doctor. I was never. So I have to believe
your handwriting's not bad enough to be a doctor.
Exactly.
It's probably very nice.
I was never. I have to believe that what I'm doing, firstly, can have some sort of impact, even if it's a tiny little thing.
For sure, yeah.
And so, with that in mind, and knowing myself again, rural England, you don't look like others around you, how important representation would have been. Knowing that I can play a small part in putting that out into the world, or in education in some way, that I feel incredibly lucky to be able to do that. So I would say that that's it, and always trying to ensure as much as possible that whatever, whatever writing I'm doing is not causing harm, is pushing something forward that, my inner child would have been happy with.
I like that. Yeah. It's something I try to do as well, is to kind of root what I do with some sort of a purpose, and I found for me that purpose is the people, the human connections along the way, and the experiences and, memories that wouldn't have otherwise existed. So it's, it's an ever evolving process. I like that, how you put that together. So thank you. Yeah. So of the kind of main areas that you've worked in, like radio, TV, journalism, which one do you like the most? Which one do you find the most challenging, and which one the most rewarding?
It's a very, very good question. Can I give a cop-out answer and say I like them all equally? Is that acceptable?
Do they all kind of lend themselves to one another, and you use all of them a lot?
Yeah, I think that's it. Each one of them has a sort of special role, and I think allows me to keep things interesting for myself. I think I used to talking to I'm lucky I have a very close relationship with my parents, and so kind of speaking to them, this is what I want to make this film and blah blah blah. And then I remember my dad asking, okay, so say you've made all these films, what then? And it was really,
it's the great question. And the biggest flaw of humans, it's like I heard something yesterday, it's like the destination is just the start of the next journey. Just like, oh my God, it's never ending.
Truly, that's so ending. Well said. Yeah. I am a huge fan of Jameela Jamil. She's the actress, and she's a podcast host in UK, sort of wonderful radio host, and now lives in America. And she was reflecting as well. She said what she would hope for, I think it was something, let me just butcher this completely, but something about a hope that she would have for people who or perhaps for her enemies who like really were after something and were cruel to others in the pursuit of that thing, is to actually achieve the thing that they were after and realize that isn't everything.
Yeah.
Now I'm lucky I do not have enemies that I'm wishing these things for, but I think my dad asking me that question really allowed me to think, okay, hang on, it's not just that I want to create this piece of media, it's that I want to be, exactly as you said, Ramsey, in the storytelling space, no matter what that looks like. And so, I love audio, I love podcasts, love writing, love film. So being able to exist in these spaces in whatever weird mediums are to come 10, 20 years down the line as well. And even workshops, being able to engage with others as well. I think it's, it's important that we're able to be sort of versatile in the things that we find important, or finding, what is the overall through line of the thing that makes you happy, and then being open to that appearing to you in whatever way it needs to.
Totally, yeah. It's always good to have a parent or someone close to you that's going to ask you those questions.
Exactly.
Keeps you in check. That's my mom for me. It's like, there's always great, good job, but could have been, what next time, try that. It's like, it drives me insane, but I'm glad. I'm glad it's there, because it keeps you intentional about why you're doing things.
Yeah. And
that kind of intentional approach to things is one that as I mature and gain more experience, I start to embody that intentionality in everything that I do. And one of the ways I've done that is through film photography, being more intentional, coming from a digital space where we have an virtually infinite memory card. We could shoot thousands of photos in the blink of an eye. So it diminishes the value of one photo, whereas with film, it's, there's a finite amount, it's expensive, so there's like more of a risk. So it kind of forces that intentionality, and I find then that's kind of bleeding over into other areas of how I create like media in general. So
interesting. Yeah. Ramsey, interesting connections that you're making there. And I'm curious too, Ramsey, within that, like what would you say is the biggest advice that your mum has given you?
Oh my gosh. Aside from telling me what to do and to clean up after myself, the biggest advice, the one thing my mom told me is early on when I would, let's say, do things around the house or in the kitchen, and I just wasn't doing them the same way as her, and they weren't working. How do you do that? She's like, you need to understand that things take years. Some things take lots of time for you to understand them properly. And it's, not until I actually committed to doing things for over a year to 2 to 3 years is when I learned that, like, holy crap, like it does take years to master this thing that, I could have done it 3 years ago at a surface level, but now I can do it with this sort of like kind of like rhythmic kind of flow while doing it, and then you could start getting creative with it. So that is probably my biggest takeaway from what she's taught me. Yeah.
Amazing.
How about you? Do you have anything in particular?
No, Ramsey, first of all, that's beautiful, and I think so important as well, allowing ourselves to take the time to learn. and to know that something is a longer process. I think, something that I don't categorize myself as a person who starts 50 projects and then doesn't finish them. But it's really my partner also who is with me and celebrates my work and really has a very strategic mind. And he's the one to be like, this all sounds very exciting, but what about this one project that you really need to finish? So I think that's been very helpful, and I feel like it connects to that of just allowing yourself to slow down, to learn, to spend, really give something the time that it deserves, and then it ends up feeding back into you the way that you deserve as well. I don't honestly, no, my parents, I think really, I think just knowledge of self. I think I was always encouraged to know who I am and to have that sort of quiet space and with spirituality and kind of not being afraid to go in deep, which has been incredibly helpful. And nature, they would always make the space for us to go out and to kind of have that quiet time, which I think has made it a lot easier to stay grounded even when things get very busy or chaotic, as they often do in the film space as well, no matter which level you're playing at. Yeah.
Nice. So do you make a point to be in nature often, or do you try to?
I don't drive. So if I did, I'm no doubt I would be at Gatno Park all the time. So the exact opposite of you, Ramsey. I'm like, what is a car? I don't know.
So honestly, your life is more simple without cars.
Yeah.
Just put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Ramsey, this is very embarrassing. When you were telling me where the studio is, you mentioned there's a Subaru outside. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's a big car. I Googled it to be like, what does the Subaru look like? It's all part of. I'm like, I have no idea.
Honestly, that's fine. that humility is will take you very far.
Thank you.
Just openly admitting that. Yeah.
So your question one more time.
I can't. I was asking if your parents have imparted any like wisdom or knowledge. You mentioned it was about the relationship with the self and taking the time. I was asking if you go out in nature a lot, and especially coming to a country where winter is, it's kind of insane. Like I try to go for a walk every morning, and I went for a walk this morning, and went to the same little pond that I usually go to, and it was completely changed. Like the environment is like 180 shift. It looks so different than it did 4 days ago before the snowstorm. So I personally love it, but I'm curious, do you like to go out in nature, and has the winters here messed with you at all? Yes,
they have. It has, absolutely. No, and you know what, Ramsey, it's yeah, I do. I'm very lucky. We live close to Strathcona Park, and so exactly as you're saying, being able to go to those walks. There's this one bit along the river. It's got this like big rock where I can sit, and I do still. Again, I'm 6 years in. I'm still. There are landscapes in this country. It's crazy. Being able to sit on that rock and looking at the river, and especially if I kind of like tunnel vision a bit, I'm able to just only see the nature as opposed to kind of all the buildings. And I'm amazed. It's so gorgeous. I remember one time with my partner around that same area, we saw a duck which was trying to kill a crab, and all her ducklings were there, and then there was a turtle, kind of like a very little turtle going into the mud too. Yeah. That moment has stayed with me because I'm like, Canada, you're so cute. But Canada's not cute in the winter. Although I am trying this year, 6 years in, to be thankful for winter and to think that it's beautiful. And it is gorgeous. Right now it's gorgeous. But even the -30, I'm just going to be like, thanks, Canada. I'm so happy to be here. Because no, it has, I remember 2 times where it has actually made me emotional to the point that I wanted to cry, because it just is like, why did I do this? Why does this hurt? Why does this hurt me so deeply? I had to ask my cousin. One point we were outside, and it's when it gets so cold that your legs are burning, and I had never experienced anything close to frostbite. And I'm like, are you sure we're not in danger right now? And she's like, no, it's fine. I'm like, my skin is going to come off. Okay. But no, grateful to be here.
It does take time. It took me a very long time to appreciate winter, and it brings about this sort of, I find, resilience in the people to have like 60 degrees Celsius of variation from July to February. So it's insane. Like our bodies can withstand that, and sure, our minds may not be happy, but our body can 100% stand it and not be in harm, which I think is incredible. And I try to expose myself to cold showers and just cold plunges when I can to like better prepare myself for it. But winter's cool because it brings about, for me at least, it brings about an opportunity to do stuff like this podcast where we can sit inside and have a conversation. Whereas in the summer, it's beautiful. You don't want to sit inside. It gives you a chance to just work on things that you've put off all year. And I always say, I feel like if it was summer all year, like California, I wouldn't get anything done.
That's so funny.
Just be like,
Ramsey, okay, I'm gonna add this to the back pocket of things that I'm going to be happy about this year for winter. I love that. No, the physical resilience, the gratitude for being able to stay indoors. You're right. All of these things.
Winter sports too.
This is true. Yeah, I'm ice skating badly, but surely. So that's good.
Amazing.
And you were 7. You were 7 years old. You were very little coming into Canada and being frozen. So I take my hat off to you. Truly.
I feel like it's easier as a kid because you don't really care about the discomfort nearly as much.
Right.
You get strapped up in a snowsuit and go play outside. And I thankfully had cousins who, were into skating, and I got into skiing kind of early on as a kid. So I'm grateful to have had that opportunity when I was a kid, because now in my adult years, I still skate and ski. And although I didn't ski for many years, skiing is downhill skiing. Cross country is a whole different beast, still beautiful, but skiing is so cool. Like it's what I like doing things that are kind of absurd when you really break it down to what it is. Like racing cars and sliding your body down a hill on 2 sticks is crazy if you really think about it. And you're going pretty fast at times. So, plus the views. The views are cool.
Yeah.
Have you ever been up to the top of like Camp Fortune, Gatineau Park?
No, I haven't. We went cross country skiing. There was the tiniest hill. I did that. I'm proud of myself. That's a level that I'm happy with. It's good.
There's some beautiful hikes though, because from where you are, Strathcona is not far from Gatineau. So have you seen that radio tower in the distance at the top of the hill?
Yes.
That's Camp Fortune. So that's like a ski hill resort, sure. And there's some beautiful hikes where you can go up the side that faces Ottawa and catch some really cool views of the city. And then once you get to the top, you just see the rolling hills that go on forever and ever on the Quebec side. So I highly recommend that. It's not a very hard hike either. Amazing. To compare to like, let's say, actually like the west coast of Canada and some other like actual mountains. Like this is kind of, it's just a walk in the park in a way. Yeah.
I'll have to add that to the list.
Add that to the list.
Beautiful, for sure.
So Nickie, being a journalist, and this is something I'm curious about because as a podcast host, it is one of the challenges is, asking questions that have value to, my guests, to have value to our viewers and our listeners. Can you ask it all? Like, do you ever get to a point where you're like, I've asked everything I can ask?
This is very funny. I'm yet to hit that point.
Okay.
I think if you find, Ramsey, wait, is there a scenario you're thinking of, or is it that you wanted the conversation to keep going and you find the person isn't giving you much, or is it just, I'm curious, what is the...
Maybe I feel like some of it is the fear of being redundant and repetitive kind of thing, where it's like, okay, I've asked similar questions to other guests, so I sometimes get worried if I'm asking those to people in different industries, because I don't want to have the same conversation over and over again. But also sometimes it's just like, okay, I have an opportunity to have a new guest on the show. Now I have to, find out some questions, and I find some people, depending on what they do, it's harder to find questions to ask them than others. So sometimes I'm like, I feel like I've asked everything. I try to stay away from using artificial intelligence to generate questions, because that brings about a whole other thought process of who's actually thinking right now. Is it the machines or is it the humans? And I like to get away from, I like to be aware of where my thoughts and decisions come from, because I don't want to be making decisions in this life that have been, subtly exposed to me through the form of ads or something. But
interesting.
Random aside, but
no
question ideating, generating questions. Like, I do find it challenging at times. Like, do you experience that, and how do you kind of overcome those situations if you find yourself in them?
Yeah. Again, it's a very good question, Ramsey. I think because I've been doing this for at least 10 years, I sort of feel like I've had, again, been lucky enough to be able to play around a lot when I was 20 odd years old. And I still remember the first interview that I did. It was with a photographer in Exeter, where I went to university, and I remember my palms sweating, and I'm like doing this because I'm so nervous, and I had my little notebook with my questions. And
was it like a recorded interview kind of thing that you were going to write about after?
Exactly. Okay. And I remember my another interview where my the thing that I was recording with died, and I didn't tell the person. I just kept going, and then they were like, "Is that still recording?" I'm like, "Yes."
Don't tell me how to do my job.
Yes, it is recording. Or another time, I was in a really busy pub trying to record an interview with this musician, and then he's like, "Should we go somewhere else?" I'm like, no, it's fine. And then you go home and you listen. I'm like, I can't understand anything. And so I sent him some like gibberish of what I'm like, "This is what you said," and he's like, "No, fix it." So I think I've had all these blunders to kind of put me in a place where, I'm lucky to get to have interviews with folks who and to kind of feel comfortable in that. And Ramsey, I think this is so interesting. I have been lucky in that I think when somebody wants to be there in the conversation with you, they are able to give back and to make it easy for the conversation to flow. Obviously, sometimes people are more shy, and so I think one thing that I really like that you do is you share stories about yourself as well, so that this feels more like a conversation. I feel comfortable with you, your guests feel comfortable, and so they're more likely to share things like, I Googled what a Subaru is. So
I love that.
Yes.
It's one of the greatest cars ever made, by the way.
Okay, well now I know what it looks like.
Especially it's like one of those cars that it can do everything at like a level that's just a little bit above just good. Can drive in the winter. You can go on dirt roads, take it camping, take it road tripping. It handles pretty well. It's pretty comfortable. It's not the best at anything, but it does many things like well. So that's why. Is
that the only car I should know? Because I feel like
Subaru.
Yeah.
There's so many. Cars is just, I guess, guilty pleasure for me. If you call vehicle, and maybe one too many. You have like 4 cars and an ATV.
Whatever brings you joy, my friend.
But I will say, for those of you who listening who may think, "Oh, you're spoiled," none of them cost more than like $6,000. They were all cheap cars. They needed a little bit of love, and bought them and made them better. And some stayed, some left. Some have a very specific purpose and are not roadworthy. But anyway, sorry to get sidetracked.
No, Ramsey, no, I think that's so right. Look at that. You're bringing them home. You're going to taking care of them like a little shelter animal, and then you're fostering them. That's very nice.
Well, there's just so many cars, and it's like part of me I work in the industry of automotive. I work with a Mercedes-Benz dealership to do marketing content for the cars, and I see the amount of new vehicles that are being put out into the world, and I'm like, someone needs to save. Like, the old cars are just sitting around rotting away, and I like to breathe new life into old things using new technology. And I do get a little attached at times, but it's nice because then you make an old thing better and it lives on for longer than it would have otherwise.
That's lovely. That is not a guilty pleasure. That is you doing good.
That's the justification, though, for having
we all
the logistical nightmare of
that's all right.
Cars in 3 different places, and that's fine. I can't even remember what I was asking you before.
You were asking about coming up with questions.
Yes.
Ramsey, I think, have you actually you mentioned maybe there's certain industries where you're not able to ask as many questions. Ramsey, I think I'm interested from a listener perspective. The experience that you have in these interviews is going to be totally different to how it sounds to others, I think, in some cases. So the first thing, I reserve any judgment, because it's still those interviews where you might have felt that you're having a harder time. What does that actually sound like your audience. And maybe that's not coming across, but I think there's also things like pre-interviews. So having the chat, running through all the questions with them, getting out the interesting stories so that you're then able to craft, okay, I know this about them. Here's what they want to talk about. Let me reverse engineer the questions so that we both have a kind of safety sort of guardrails on where this conversation is going to go, still allowing some flexibility. So I think if there's ever somebody where you say, you know, I really want to talk to them, can see that we're going to hit a wall, I think, again, spending that bit of time with them before might be how I would try to kind of get around that.
So do you deploy that technique then if you're doing, let's say, an interview to be written in text form?
So with journalism, no. But with things like radio, documentaries, for sure. Yeah. Kind of spending that time with them just to make sure, again, we're able to pick up the exact content that we need for that then to be kind of edited and move on. Yeah.
My biggest, I guess, fear with that and asking the questions before is the fear that we're going to feel like we're having the same, or at least I'm going to feel like I'm having the same conversation twice. And I want the podcast to be authentic, unscripted. And I don't know. I like it to be the first time we've spoken about this exact topic. So for film interviews and documentary, I could see that actually being very valuable. And still talking beforehand is a good point. But yeah, I like to keep these conversations like this is the first time we've spoken about it and it's real. Yeah. I think people appreciate that it's real and it's, you know, flawed. Maybe in some way our responses aren't perfect because it's more relatable that way.
Yeah, absolutely. No, Ramsey, the fact that you have an intention behind it, I think that's wonderful. You know why you're doing what you're doing. And honestly, as you know, like the more you have these conversations as well, the easier it's going to get, the more you're going to be like, oh yeah, I remember this time with this person, you know, I ran into this issue. So now with the next person, here's a question that really worked, you know?
Totally. Yeah. Nickie, is there anything you do on like a human level that you find lends itself to a more productive, more creative work, Nickie? Like you know, human Nickie, what do you do for yourself that you find when you get back to your office, your desk, or your workspace, you feel refreshed, you feel energized?
Yeah. I think it's all the sort of basic self-care piece. Going for walks, I think, you know, when I have been the most stressed about something or the most nervous about a client meeting, just taking myself for a short walk or even going up with, lucky the apartment that we're in, it has a roof upstairs, just being able to go outside for a second, come back in. I'm like, oh, actually everything's fine. I was worrying about nothing. Yeah. And then sleep, ensuring I sleep enough, exercise, drinking enough water, all those little things. And then honestly also getting to spend time with friends and family to really ensure that there is that balance happening as opposed to just working into the evening day after day after day.
Yeah, that can be tough.
Yes.
I know that feeling. You feel like you're just like trapped inside and nothing inside of you wants to get up and go outside or go and exercise. And I find every time when I'm in that situation, I struggle, and then I get to the walk or the gym or whatever, and then I'm like, whoa, like I feel that was good. Yeah. I'm glad I did that. And then it puts your stresses into perspective. Yeah. It's good to know that it really boils down to those simple things, the ones that are just the too good to be true. It's so simple, it probably doesn't work, but I'm realizing it does. Yeah. The impact that, you know, walking every morning has had is incredible. Just getting up, and even if it's 5 minutes, just moving my body and going outside helps a lot too.
Amazing. So important for sure. And I mean, I get to, with my cousin and a friend of ours, we go to this dance class every Monday. Nice. Where it's like these ridiculous, you know, fun, like silly songs from the 90s. And it's just with a group of mostly women. So that's been really fun too, being able to bring, on the note of humility and silliness, being able to just kind of let go completely, be ridiculous for an hour together, go grab dinner, and then kind of just resets things a bit.
I love that. Yeah, just moving your body, move energy, and you just like let it out, jump around, whatever it is. That's awesome. Exactly. I love that. You mentioned, or I saw that you worked for the Globe and Mail. You mentioned that. What was it like working for what's it like working for bigger companies that have like these big audiences, and you know you're kind of going into it knowing your work may be seen or consumed by lots of people, does that change the way you approach things?
Yeah, it's a good question, Ramsey. Also, I'm really new, so it's the Globe and Mail content studio, so it's the marketing side. So I've just joined as one of their, freelance project editors. So looking forward to diving into the first project with them to come. But I think, that also felt like a big marker as well. It's a again, wonderful opportunity to get to connect with different copy editors from across Canada, and it definitely felt like a moment where I'm like, okay, I have arrived one step further in this side. But no, still super new there. But so perhaps I can speak to other larger kind of publications that I've been with. I think honestly, all of my clients as well. I mean, it is perhaps more corporate. I have a lot of tech clients in the AI space, actually. On the note of ChatGPT and all that, I do use these tools. I do think that, so I'm interested to have a chat with you about that. Yes. And then philanthropy and, law and I think, Ramsey, was your question just what is it like to turn up in these spaces? Yeah, it's just like, so the reason I ask is because, with creating content media for people that's, bringing some sort of value, it starts to bring about an audience and a following, and that can make some different thoughts or maybe change the way you view what you've created, because now you're almost like accountable to the people that are listening. Does it? I'm still navigating all this as the Creatives grows and as like my YouTube channel grows and everything grows. But I was asking, does it change the way you approach things when you know that what you're doing is for sure going to be seen by a lot of people, or do you not really consider that in the process? Okay, I see what you're saying. For my clients on the corporate side, I mean, because it starts, Ramsey, this is a very good question, because this is assuming that I do a lot of writing that I don't think people will see, this is telling me that I should be doing more of that. First of all, just to still be able to play around in the writing space. I play a little bit of music, tiny bit on the self-taught with guitar, and I find that is a very free space for me, because I'm like, there's no one's ever going to hear this. This is purely for me. Writing is very much, I'm doing it day in, day out for my clients. Their customers, whoever is going to see it. With my scripts as well, they're being written with the ultimate purpose of folks seeing them. So I think I am very often thinking from the lens of the audience, except for when I'm writing in my own diary, for example. But perhaps with the little documentary about the Iranian noses, that one specifically, I have brought in a personal story that it's going to open with that I find hilarious. It is about the fact that I'm giving you a sneak peek here into the doc. It's going to come out in March, Persian New Year. That's amazing. Where can people see it once it's out? CBC Gem is where it's going to be up in there. CBC's YouTube channel as well. And you'll link through your website, I imagine. Yes. Because I'm going to put your website in the description so that very kind. Whenever people are watching this, they can find that and then find that. Excellent, Ramsey. Yeah. Thank you. I mean, with that as well, it was, when I was pitching it, it seemed very far removed. I was like, okay, here's the historical reasons why Iran is such a hub of plastic surgery. Here is societal reasons, all of these things. And yes, I'll throw in a little bit of my own experience. And then it was really sitting down, starting to write it, that I realized this is so much more, I think, personally makes me laugh if I start it with my own stories. Nice. But then that means that I have to be open to being vulnerable in a way that is uncomfortable, which is exactly what you're speaking to here, which is I'm writing while being deeply aware that others are going to see something that is personal to me. But then, you write it down and you realize it's okay to be vulnerable. And then, you end up having fun with it, and it's connected me to folks. So the story that it starts with is when I was in my early 20s, I went on a date with this guy. And he says to me, "I can tell your biggest insecurity." And I was like, "What is it?" And he tells me it's my nose. And so, just excellent interactions there.
Yeah, quite thing to say to your date.
I think he thought he was being very like perceptive and all these things.
Yeah.
Like early 20s, it's a weird time for us all. But even that, I was like, okay, what I'm saying here is I'm acknowledging that I've dated in the past. Which is ridiculous. I mean, my friends, I don't have that sort of, but it's just because how I present myself or have always presented. It's my journalism, it's my work. It's a very like, not even giving an inch of my own life. And so being able slowly opening myself up to that has been interesting. And actually in January 2024, I'm going to be running a workshop series through Digital Arts Resource Centre around brand storytelling for artists.
Cool.
And apart from loving dark and wanting to do things with them all the time, a reason for this has been I really struggled to promote myself online. And even though I've done so much for my clients and like I do a lot of, all 10 years of running my business, but still not being able to do what I do for others for myself. And so it's been an excuse to be like, okay, I'm going to get a group of people together and every single week we're going to commit to like posting a thing online and then we're going to support each other through it. And that's what it's going to have to be. So nice. I'm building the accountability in. And so I guess that is writing whilst being aware that others will see it and accepting to be vulnerable. If that answers your question, Ramsey.
It kind of does. Yeah, no, yeah. It definitely gives me a glimpse into how you approach things and, your views on vulnerability, because it is one thing that this podcast has given me an opportunity to be vulnerable with the audience, while being inspired by my guests. I find that the biggest paradox is like the photographer, the creator or creative of some sort puts all this effort and time in creating beautiful work for other people and they don't do it for themselves.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. It's complicated. I understand it's a complicated process and, I'm here for the people that want to do that. I support that because I think it's cool to, write your own story on the internet as you want it to be told. And I find this podcast has offered a platform for people to start that journey. Because I've had some people on the show that have never been on camera before. Wow. Or they're rarely ever on camera. Maybe a lot of people have never been in this exact setting where it's like a microphone, headphones, conversation with a camera, whatever. So it's interesting because it is where we're headed as a society. Digital communications are huge, so there's no use denying the future, and I think it's more fun to just embrace it and then craft it the way you want to leave your legacy behind. Yeah.
Beautifully said.
Thank
Beautifully
you.
said. Yes. Agreed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know we could spiral into this topic of AI. You mentioned you work a little bit with AI.
Yes.
I think it's amazing. Incredible tool. Has its place. But when it comes to human things, I find it has this sort of like undertone to it where you can pretty well tell when someone has generated a piece of text or a question or a script using AI. And I find at first I was like blown away. I was like, this is amazing. I will admit I did use it to help me generate questions. And then I didn't use it very much because I was like, no, this is dangerous. Like this is dangerous. It's making me lazy as a host. It's making me lazy as I'm doing my research. So I try to stay away from AI. It's like emergency red button. I need help. Let's use it. So what are your views on that as a tool for the work that you do?
Yeah, Ramsey, no, again, I can see that you approach everything with intention. You're approaching your work, this podcast, and how you think about your guests. And I think that point about laziness as well. So a friend of mine was chatting about a book that she'd read recently that speaks about brain elasticity and how over-reliance on GPS to tell you where you're going, that we're doing that a bit too much, and so she, as much as possible, doesn't use her GPS anymore, which I'm very impressed with, because sense of direction is not one of my top skills. But so I like your point here. I think what are the ways that we can keep our brains engaged, and what are the ways to ensure that sort of creative thinking, because it's a tool, right? It's a muscle, sorry. For myself, I agree with you. I don't think the writing, thank God, because we're all, obviously there's loads of job losses coming. I am so happy that things worked out with the writers' strike and with the actors. I think we do need extremely thorough policies around AI.
Totally, yeah.
But for myself as well, I think I don't, like when I use it, again, I think from the journalism end with questions, I've been doing it so much, like it just sort of, the questions kind of come a bit more easily sometimes. But for things like, if I'm writing a proposal, if you're doing a grant, all these kinds of things, I have found it very helpful to give me a starting point. And especially because just for productivity's sake, I mean, my God, I hear that coming out of my mouth and I'm like,
but those are like the more mechanical
busy,
things, right?
Exactly.
The more like tedious. But it's not very human. It's like
well said.
Yeah. It's not like the human interaction, but carry on. What are you saying?
No, actually, no, that was such a good point. Yeah, you're right. You're saying you don't use it for questions. The human element, honestly, I have not had that come up for me yet where I have felt the need to do that. And maybe it is that sort of human element to it. And again, Ramsey, you said this is number 24, so you've had so many interviews as well. I'm sure the questions kind of just flow for you at this point too.
Yeah.
But no, exactly. So I suppose we agree then.
Nice.
Yes.
I like that. It is true. Like with great power comes great responsibility. And I do, you said I do things with intention. Thank you for putting it so nicely. I feel like I overanalyze and overthink a lot of things. In my brain, it's it's a little bit of it's very active. My brain is very active. I think a lot. And so I always try to engage in things that help me to quiet my mind. Meditation, ongoing practice, exercise, journaling, ongoing practice. But what I was going to say, I lost my train of thought here. What were we talking about?
AI. And then the fact that you do things with intention and the overthinking.
Yes. Completely lost.
That's okay.
But yeah, to the AI point, yes, great power, great responsibility. I'm starting now, thank you for helping me come back to that, to realize how much of a great power we do have, all of us, at our fingertips. Our ability to communicate in an instant and have anything we want in an instant. You run your fingers along a piece of glass and a car shows up at your door, food shows up at your door. It's, again, this, like I said, I like to boil things down to what is actually happening, like the sliding down a hill on 2 sticks, downhill skiing. So I try to exercise that responsibility and have a bit more intention with how I use it. And it's something I want to communicate because I find we may be just, blindly using things or doing things or consuming things without realizing what it's doing to us in return. Because, our physical chemical composition hasn't changed much in the last 200, 300 years, maybe even longer. But we're getting all of this sensory overload, tools, access to information. And it's just like, it's kind of exhausting.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I like to remind myself to just be more aware of how that all kind of blends into my life because it's messy.
Yeah. No, very well said.
Yeah.
Ramsey, and I hadn't thought about it as just glass. It even took me a second. I'm like, wait, what do you do? But yeah,
the phone,
you're right. Yes,
a phone screen. Like if you turn off the phone and you boil it down to like what is happening, you're just moving on the glass and poking glass. Like it's weird if you really think about it.
It's very bloody odd. That's true. Yes, yeah.
Life will never be the same.
No, truly. No, and intentionality, right? And maybe a bit of overthink. I overthink too. It's, yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Nickie, if you could kind of talk to your past self, leave a message to your past self, what would you say? Or do differently?
Yeah. I'd probably say, man, it's so, what I want to say is what my dad would say to me as well, is that his hope for me was that I would stop worrying. And, it's kind of crazy because I want to say that, but I also know how hard it is and how much I had to worry to get to, to go through that and to see this thing. But I think what I would say is everything that you're imagining for yourself will come true. It is coming true. I think having that faith in yourself, and trusting your own instincts and your own vision. And just try and take it easy just a little bit.
That's a big one. I like that.
Yeah.
Take it easy. Don't worry. Trust your instincts thing. Yeah.
That's it.
Good. Now knowing that, does it help you, like, moving forward? Do you kind of try to remember those things? Ooh. Or is it still hard?
It's so good. It's still hard. It's still, it is, but it is getting easier. I turned 30 in September, and a friend of mine who I met when I was 24, and she was a bit older, she would consistently tell me, when you turn 30, just hold on, because you're going to stop caring so much what other people think. It's going to be so good. Just hold on. And I kind of became, through those few years, a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. When I did turn 30, I was like, okay, for years now, my friend has been telling me this, and therefore I have been telling myself, you get to 30, you're just going to feel more settled. And so it's come true, which has been really lovely. I think this, a lot of things have started shifting, or rather I have shifted them, which has been good, which has been very good. And also it's going to sound bit random, but my hair started turning white when I was 11, just a little bit. And every now and then I will look at myself in the mirror, and because the white hair is there, I'm like, okay, I'm talking to myself at 40 or at 50. And so you can have this moment where I'm like, funny. Things are going to be okay because she's 50 over there and she looks fine. So that's awesome. Being able to have that kind of communication. What about you, Ramsey? Do you look in the mirror and you now have to tell me kind of a weird thing that you do to feel better about future Ramsey?
Well, just to talk about looking in a mirror, I oftentimes, not often, but it happens where you look in a mirror so deeply where you see past the physical form and you start realizing like what you are, you know what I mean? Like, or a certain question, what am I? Yeah. Like I'm manifested as this physical body, but there is something deeper in there. And my meditation and spiritual explorations have taken me to the whole idea of consciousness, and the fact that the consciousness is the experiencer of the emotions and the thoughts and the feelings. So the mirror thing, just deep looking in there. But what would you say, message to past self for me? Is that what you would ask?
Honestly, I was just interested also if there was anything that you do that that connects you with your future self. But also message for your past self too.
Past self, a big one. For top of mind, it would be to buy Tesla stocks when they were young.
Smart.
But aside from that, a lot of the similar things that you said, the worrying, the things you want to make happen will happen as they have, with enough commitment and effort, they all materialize in some amount of time. But you were saying, what do I do to connect with?
Do you have anything where you think about yourself at 40, at 50, at 30, and do you have a communication with yourself?
Not too much. I don't think I should be a little bit more future oriented and like consider like short-term plans a little bit better. That's one of my weaknesses, is planning, effectively planning over longer periods of time, but nothing in particular, just to stay true to myself and stay on this journey of improvement in some way, always finding some boundaries and just moving the limit further and further. And I just hope to, when I'm 30, 40, 50 years old, that I'm continuing. I don't hope, I plan to, that's the plan, is to just continue to be disciplined and push in all those boundaries so that I can be the person that I want to be for everyone around me.
Wonderful, Ramsey. That's wonderful. Very important. Yes.
Thank you. I don't get asked questions like that too often. It's interesting interviewing you as a journalist because I like that you reflect questions back. And that was one thing Dina did. She was one of the first guests to actually ask me questions and have to bring about thoughts and conversations from me that guests don't usually do. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. Do you like it, or do you wish that we would stop?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. Okay.
I love it because it's like I said, two-sided. We're both learning something. You're asking because maybe you're curious, and I'm asking because I'm curious. So if we're gonna kind of close this up shortly, but I've really appreciated chatting with you, Nickie. If there's any advice you could leave for others who are aspiring to follow in your footsteps, to follow into, one of the spaces that you've kind of been in, what advice would you give to those people?
I think you don't have to go to school for this. Mm-hmm. If you do, wonderful. Make those connections, build up on it. If you are doing something totally different and you want to shift, I think the space is very open and forgiving for that. You can come, you can learn as you go. I think we're flying by the seat of our pants quite often, learning as we go along. And I think perhaps the most important thing is connecting with others who are your peers, who want to get to where you want to get, because you will be, again, learning together. You will be doing the short film together. You will be doing the radio play together. And then as you grow, one of you is going to get that job, and then they're going to bring along the other person. And I feel like that's really the most sort of vital piece here. And I'm starting to see it happen with the peers around me, as well as we all grow, as we start to kind of get to places. So I would say those are the two most important things, is don't sort of count yourself out before you've given yourself a chance, and just find others who want to do the same thing as you.
I like that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that wisdom, insight. I'm starting to realize some of those things too for myself, the working with the people, and one person gets the opportunity and brings the others along, and then everyone just kind of grows from it. So
that's
it. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us on the Creatives Podcast in our continuous exploration of this database of creativity, yes, which I don't think will ever end. It may not forever possess this format, but for now I'm enjoying this format of conversation. I hope you enjoyed being a guest. Thank you for your time and for, coming out here and sharing your story with the world.
Yes, thank you for having me, Ramsey, and thank you for what you're doing as well. I'm looking forward to keeping up with it all. Yeah,
my pleasure. And thank you, listeners, for listening, watching, and remember, if you're listening and you're not subscribed, subscribe on your favorite platform so that you can stay up to date when we have new episodes come out. Big shout out to Pano Media, Minute Hour Studios, and our editor Ryan, who's working hard behind the scenes to craft these episodes and create the clips that we post on social media. And we will see you on the next episode. Don't forget to enjoy yourself.